bioregion, state, deeply inform how she began to unfold the work that reconnects. Now, for those of you who are isolated or who are in areas where you don't know a good next step, this book is open source, and it's every group work that she's done, and it could be done as a study group. Active Hope, I learned today, if you go to their website, activehope.info, I think, it is also open source, and another possibility for a great study group that begins to create community and also help you with her framework. Now, again, back to the framework, what she sees now is that we have 3 stories going on. We have business as usual, which is you know, it's one of the confusing parts of our time, is that we get up in the morning and the sun is beautiful, and maybe you have snow, maybe you have water. A lot of things look just the way they are. And that is how it is. And then there is a second thing going on, the great unraveling. And clearly that is where Australia is today. You know, places like Somalia have been experiencing it for a long, long time. So that is another framework. It's not hard to, you know, when you say, oh, there goes the great unraveling in that country. You can tell your partner who knows nothing about Joanna Macy, and they can kind of get it. And that's why I like her terminology very much. And then the last thing she talks about, which is kind of where we're focusing the rest of the talk today, is on the great turning. And the great turning is where things are beginning to change because people know it is time for transformation. And Gail, this would be a good time to bring on Joanna to speak.
Okay. No. Try that again. Share. Okay. Penny, we had it before, and something about YouTube skips out when I put it on, so I'm going to have to take probably 2 minutes to make that happen. I have to get out the, I have to figure out what I have to do. So.
All right. Well, I've got something to work with 2 minutes.
Okay.
All right. And I think I'll go to well, all right. I'm just going to do this. We have never had success with music. I have a cold, raspy voice, but one of Joanna's wishes is that more arts and more music come out of the work of the Great Turning. And if you think, I mean, many of you are from the 60s era.
Yes.
I was at a talk not too long ago where someone said, you know, the folk music was the internet of the 60s. And we are sadly lacking inspirational music that gets us marching, gets us awakening, gets us, it's happening. But if you do a search, and maybe it's generational, and my apologies, Ben, as our young representative, like there's a song called Not, and it's about climate change, and it's wanting to inspire, but it's very heavy. You know, it's not presented in the folk music understandability. But I'm just gonna, Gail, let me just check before I break your ears. Are you good? Oh, she's good. All right. Your ears are saved. All right. We're going to cut to Joanna talking about the Great Turning.
All right.
what we have now is a shift, a transformational moment in human history that is similar in scope and magnitude to two previous revolutions. And that took centuries. And the second that was that big in terms of how it changed human life was the Industrial Revolution, which started just 200 years ago. This was the third revolution of comparable magnitude. Lester Brown called it the environmental revolution and the ecological revolution. Dana Meadows called it the sustainability revolution, but more and more of us are simply calling it the great turning. This revolution has to happen much faster, and at the same time has to be more thoroughgoing. This is a whole mindset of who and what we are in relation to the planet, that we are a living part of a living planet. We can present it as being the transition from the industrial growth society to a life-sustaining society. What determines the nature of this political economy, how it sets its goals, how it measures its success, is in terms of how it grows, how fast it grows, and grows in what? Health, longevity, wisdom, beauty and grace in the eyes of God. I mean, what? Profit. Exactly. So that right away shows you that this, from the system's point of view, is a doomed political economy. It's a doomed system on runaway because it is seeking to maximize one part of it. And once you do that with any system, everything goes out of whack and it begins to devour itself once you try to maximize one part. Then you can't have balance, which means you can't have sustainability. This is so huge a revolution, so huge a movement, this great turning, that there are perforce many ways of going about it. So I'd like to put the dimensions of the great turning in terms of flows of causality, how they're mutually supporting, so that the most obvious one that we often identify with activism is what we call holding actions. And these are all the actions that slow down the destructiveness of the industrial growth society. So these are everything from soup kitchens to protest marches to tree sittings to legal and legislative campaigns. But it's not enough, because the life-sustaining society needs structures, new ways of doing things. Guyan, I used to write alternative structures and patterns of organizing, new ways of holding the land, ancient ways of growing food, ways of measuring prosperity, new forms of education, ways of people teaching each other and waking each other up. That's not enough for the great turning either, because any new structures, patterns will shrivel. They'll die unless they're deeply rooted in our values, in our belief in what is worthwhile, in our assumptions about the nature of reality. And so that's happening too, in a colossal rate of speed. You can call this the shift in consciousness. There's the coming up of new evidence from science and quantum theory, systems theory, chaos theory, holographic theory. There's the wisdom traditions of ancient peoples coming up with very much the same perspective on the intricate interconnectedness of all life patterns. So new ways of seeing, new ways of seeing the sacred, new forms of spirituality, the scientific and spiritual revolution. So it's an incredible time to be alive. So that's another reason why I just want to anchor this concept of the great turning in you, because it's a source of a sense of tremendous privilege and excitement. It means that life can go on, and that can be an exquisite reason to get up every morning.
Hmm.
All right.
All right. So if it was a little mumbled, but shifts in consciousness was the third one. So the holding actions, the changing actions, and the vision of the future. To translate holding actions into today's situation, Greta Thunberg would be an example of a holding action. She is trying to awaken governments and her peer group and the rest of us to what needs to be tended to now. All right. Any obvious, questions that need to be answered now before we move on to the spiral? Okay.
I have a question. How long is this going to run? I have to leave at a certain point, unfortunately.
I think we wrap up between 4:15 and 4:30. It will be on video. So if you go to the Creation Spirituality communities, you should be able to hear anything you missed if that's a concern. Okay? All right.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right. So, as I mentioned earlier, Matt and Joanna are colleagues, compatriots. I would certainly relish hearing those two dialogue these days. Matt at 79 and Joanna at 90, both of whom have been doing the life work of waking people up. As Joanna became familiar with creation spirituality during her Berkeley years, no doubt, she took the 4 paths and adapted them to contemporary language. And the first one is to live from gratitude. That one of the things spoken of today in today's earlier meeting was that we need a faster way to recalibrate when we are on the downward leg of that spider, when the worst has happened. I mean, think about Australia and the people that have lost everything, the environment that has lost everything. We know the grief process is not a simple one, but we can't get locked into despair. The people of Australia can't get locked into despair. And so how is it we recalibrate so we can figure out our next best response based on the tools and the feelings we are currently experiencing? So being grounded in what it is you love about life, knowing well what it is that uplifts and nourishes, begins to be a way to self-regulate, so that, despite the worst, as your energy and as your tears dry, which shovel will you pick up, because it matters the most. All right. The second one, and this is so essential, and it's so out of the feedback loop of today's society, is honoring our pain. I mean, we have governments all over the world that are taking the word climate change out of policy. And how, when you suppress something of that magnitude at that level, you can imagine how not hearing truth over and over and over muddles the mind. So essential to this process is facing what it is you grieve, so that you can then create your best response. And that happens through seeing with new eyes. And then it's also linking arms. And that is the going forth. That this has to be done. Not everything has to be done in community, but a lot more than is being done right now in community has to be done in community going forward. I would say that since August, our small Work That Reconnects group has been meeting. And whatever our topic is, however challenging it may be, and one night we just read Chief Seattle's letter, and it's heartbreaking. It's from one of her earlier books, Thinking Like a Mountain, I think. Nonetheless, in the intense reading of this, we left elevated in the sense that it was a shared experience. And continuously, that seems to be the alchemical balm of community. And so the linking arms, she has a quote where she says, you should do none of this alone. And so, of course, we have to do the interior work that we must do, because this is not only impacting us externally, it is impacting us internally. But it's this business of deep, meaningful connection that will be one of the places of gratitude that allows one to start over after facing what is unimaginable. And without going too far into it, there is this sense that things are worse than we thought they would be at this point in time. And so looking forward, we can know that there will be a future where we are constantly being called to self-regulate, to bring oneself back to center in order to move forward, to create our best response, no matter what. Okay. So we, and Gail, I need your input here. We have 4 questions, and a lot of Joanna's work works with open-ended sentences. And we thought we might do a little bit of this, and let's see what our time is, 4:02. Maybe, since we wouldn't have time to go very deeply at all on this, but these questions take the spiral, the 4 parts on the spiral, and invite an answer.
Oh,
And Gail, do you have any thoughts on how we might want to do that?
well, we could just, first we could read each one and leave some silence for us to consider our answers without speaking them out loud. And then we could go back again and repeat them. I'll take everybody off mute, and anybody who has something can say it.
All right.
Everybody maybe think of answering one of the 4 questions, and I think that would give us a good time space.
All right. And then I think what we do is maybe set 10 minutes after I read the questions. We have 10 minutes for this part of it, and then we'll wrap up with questions.
All right, great.
Okay?
Okay, yeah.
All right.
Go ahead.
So
All
the
right.
first one is the things that bring joy and meaning to my life are. And you might want to, I see people writing, which is the perfect way to do that. The second one is, when I think about what's happening in the world today, what comes up for me is, third,
Wait,
the connection.
That's it.
The connection between these two things, what brings me joy and my feelings about what is happening, is, and the last one is, my gift or role in this moment of history or in the great turning is.
Big.
Hey, can you put that sign up again that has the questions on it?
Sure.
Now that didn't, if you're on
Oh,
a different view, you can't see them as well. So you'll need to go up and go to speaker view. No, that doesn't work either.
Go into
Okay.
chat.
damn.
Yeah, I guess they'll need to go on, can we get them on chat?
Mhm.
Because what happens is if anybody makes a little bit of wrinkle, then it goes to their face and we lose the picture.
All right, I'll try to quick type them as we go right now.
Well, if she could just read them again, that would be helpful.
Sure. Things that bring joy and meaning to my life are,
Enter. Whoops.
when I think about what's happening
Okay.
in the world today, what comes up for me is the connection between these two things, what brings me joy and my feelings about what's happening is, and lastly, my gift or role in this moment of history or in the great turning is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want me to take this, Penny? Do you need to exhale a little bit?
Yeah, go ahead.
You've been really giving us some important information. I'm very grateful, but you must need a drink of water. And so there you go. Okay, so let's start with the first question. Things that bring joy and meaning to my life in this moment. Anyone?
What brings joy in my life is bringing community together in what I call the sacred circle and presenting questions for reflection among people and having them share with each other the deeper questions and experiences and the connections, the deep connections that happen among people. In our culture today, it's really hard for people to talk about deeper things. They're more inclined to talk about more superficial things. So this gives people a place, a sanctuary, a sacred place. And it feels wonderful when they share with each other and they get a deeper consciousness as a result.
Anyone? Thank you, Marcia. Anyone else? Yes, Catherine.
For me, being with my husband and my friends and my grandchildren gives me joy. Being out in nature, being involved with music, like that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Others? Yes, go ahead. Thomas, I'm going to unmute you.
Hello.
No, Tom, I've got you. You're special. I can't get you unmuted.
I am special. I am very special, as you all are. Let's see, what brings me joy? Well, in my family, I want you all to know that we put the fun in dysfunction. So when things are quieted down, and people have jobs, that brings me joy. My great-granddaughter brings me joy, Piper. You know, you might have to define what joy is, but if joy to me is a mixture of happiness and sorrow, so my meditation brings me joy. You people bring me joy, and thank you. I've talked enough.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I can say that when I held my great granddaughter on my chest for the first time, I honestly felt that her heartbeat and mine started beating together.
Oh,
And it was a moment of joy and great sadness because I was thinking about the world in which she will have to live unless things change, and caused me to really be perplexed about my feelings because I was in such joy and such grief at the same time.
thank you. All right, let's move on to the second question. Is when I think about what's happening in the world today, what comes up for me is,
And I got your link to stick it on the Amazon.
you need to know if you're going to have other sound other than speaking into the microphone, you need to mute yourself again because we hear you.
What comes up for me is grief. One of the thoughts that I wanted to ask this group is, do you know songwriter, composer who might compose a suite of songs on the stages of grief? The first of which is denial.
What's his name?
So if you have some connection about that, would you post it to the chat, please? Because that would be a helpful way to bring that to people that's not so direct.
Uh-huh.
Oh, maybe I'm misinterpreting.
And this would be for, we don't see your name, so you must have just a phone number there. So what would your name be?
I'm Ken Winter.
Ken. Oh, I see you up there. Sorry,
Yep.
I missed your.
Yes,
Ken.
I'm high up in the echelon here.
You are. You're very important. Yes. All right. I'll listen to me talk with that Western language. Gosh. All right. Anybody else? What comes up for you? Thank you.
Yes. If that's just a 16th century Flemish guy, then I'm thinking it's three painters admiring another painter. But Stephen Douglas, I'm reading in all the white paint, got Chris White.
Who's talking?
I think that's Carolyn's. It's from Carolyn. She doesn't realize we hear her. Okay. Anybody else?
For me, I see a lot of confusion. I think Penny was alluded to the fact that we're not getting a lot of truth out. Business as usual hides a lot of what is really going on, and yet there are a certain amount of people that are sensing what's going on, and it's creating an unsettledness and a confusion and a what should we be doing. And I think consciousness raising is so important right now, and good information.
Anyone else? Catherine, sorry.
It makes me feel anger and fear, hopelessness sometimes, and certainly a sense of horror.
Mhm, mhm. I can have an empty like vacuum in my head because I can't imagine the outcome. I can't imagine how anybody would let this happen. I can't imagine why they don't see it and do something about it. I get a little wild inside. That's how I feel.
Understandable.
Yeah.
Question. Oh, Sylvia, yes.
Yeah, I do feel a very much grieving, and especially with the leadership of our country as it is, it just feels like everything is working against us.
Them too, but they don't get it. Okay, number 3, the connection between these two things, joy and our feelings about what is happening. What do you find in that connection?
Well, Joanna talks about the third dimension as a shift in consciousness, and I already alluded to it, but I think providing opportunities for that shift to happen wherever any of us are in our lives, whatever communities we can connect to, whether it's even just a simple book study on active hope, you begin to shift the consciousness and have people start to look at things and talk about it and go through the process of, I am in pain. I have found now for myself personally, I cry every day, but Joanna has freed me to say it's okay to feel this pain and to grasp gratitude in the midst of all this horribleness, and say thank you and love the trees, but also to feel the pain for the ones that are dying, and also to start talking and communicating with each other. Again, getting that information out to each other. It is being hidden so much, and we need to develop communities that start to help people talk safely about what's going on.
For me, it's the idea of helping people know the sacredness of all things. Reminding and reminding and reminding, and reminding myself as well as others, and recognizing the great sorrow that I feel if these things cannot continue, and yet appreciating what's here now too at the same time. It's a great juxtaposition of opposite feelings.
The talk of consciousness versus information, we're talking about whether we get our information, which is truth or not, and facts, and we do get videos of, but that compared to the truth that we seek to make clearest can be inside of ourselves, at least gives me hope that that's something I can do. I can do that, and I can relate and work and connect with other people who are building different consciousness. That actually does create, as Joanna Macy said in her video, it does, those values do create the change. That gives me some hope.
Mhm.
Okay. Number 4. My gift or role in this movement in the great turning is yes.
My role is being present to reality while staying optimistic and even enthusiastic about what can be.
Ken, you want? Oh, you just agree. You agree. Good. Anyone else? There's different roles. Matthew, if I may think from all my hours reading his meditations, there's different roles. Some people are prophets. Some people are heroic prophets that go out and march in the streets. Some people are conversation prophets and slip in information and ask questions. Some people are artist prophets. Some people are lawyer prophets. And so doing what we can do within our own context. We don't have to, as they say, that used to be the missionary in a foreign country complex where you think you have to do something extreme. You can do something, we can do something where we are.
Joanna builds into her teaching that you will lose a lot. You will lose. But again, that's where this comes up. That even as one thing doesn't go the way you want, you connect to this next thing and you create your best response. And she's very clear, it's not about your motivation, or it's not about the outcome, it's about the motivation. That again, you have to go to where you can be resilient. And if there's wounding, that's why the community can be so helpful. If a wound is deep, which they will be, then we are wired to heal. But we have to know ourselves well enough to know when we need to heal, and then create the response. It is an open system that goes out and out and out, but it's building on the reality that pain is and always has been, a very big part of life. And there's this fabrication that we in the modern society have been able to create because of convenience, but it never was real, and it is unraveling. If that part feels enough wrapped up, before we go off, I want to share another part that Joanna is so wise to speak of, which is, and this is how we, in our group our monthly practice group, it's called the Work That Reconnects Monthly Practice Group. And if you're interested in setting up your own, there is the Work That Reconnects Network that is very helpful. And those of you in California, there are a lot of them out there. Doesn't mean you can't start your own, but it means you've got a template right there near where you are. So the way we construct our meetings is an opening, a chapter from the Coming Back to Life book or two, and then the segment 30 to 40 minutes of an evolving edge. And then we have a closing with announcements. So I do want to speak about this because this is how her work stays juicy, if you will, stays current. One of the big thrusts she's looking at in her group and her group's work is in decolonizing the work. That we are an evolving demographic, and we need to create these open and welcoming spaces for every person to be comfortable in, to do this work together. And so I think she's breaking good new ground in that regard. Another one is she's integrating deep time. So for that, it's looking at the universe story and looking at the long arcs of how evolution occurs. Another one, as I said earlier, is looking into music and art and how does that help evolve connection. And another part of this is her work with circle guidelines. It talks about being together in community and then it accidentally causing harm to someone. Well, how do you repair that? I once hosted a psychologist out here on eco-psychology, and he said, I'm doing this work now so that 200 years from now, we'll know how to live together. And that combines a couple of things. We have learned to be, if you remember the phrase, cocooned. We've learned to be sequestered more than in community. And so we have to relearn the tools of being collegial again. And this idea of, what is it that we do to smooth over the infractions that can happen. So some of her work is working on the very rudimentary, how do we get along together and how do we be real together? So this evolving edges, I think is critical, and some very interesting stuff comes forward in our monthly group that is rotated leadership. And again, we're babies at this. We've only been doing it about 6 months. But one of our newest members is leading the teaching this Tuesday. So it's that sense of empowering people that each of us owns this. This is our time in history. We are the people. And how then do we create our best response? All right. Okay, we're down to the wire now, and I do have this piece of music that is lovely, and I can play it or I can sing it to you. And if I sing it, it's dangerous. But I think it's a great piece of music. It's by a group called Mammoose. I believe they're Californians. And
Penny, as you look for it, give me just a second to do some business. First,
okay,
to thank you, because I think we'll end with a song. But first, to thank you. If there's ever a person where earth and truth are combined in a powerful way, I believe it is with Penny Andrews, as we've all experienced today. It's taken decades for you to come to the point to be able to lead us and be so engaged as you are and bring all your personal energy to this problem that we're facing. And thank you for that work. Thank you for that decades of work. To the group, I want to invite you to come and see Art next month, and talk with him at the same time. I think we have one person come in. It's hard to get those times straight, but 4 o'clock in the East Coast is 1 o'clock in California, etc. So try to keep.
Gail, can I say?
Yeah.
Gail, can I say something really quick?
Sure, please.
I put in 3 very mysterious quotes in the chat, and my talk's going to have something to do with that.
Oh, good. Thank you.
I don't have a title yet. So.
Oh, okay, good. All right, I'll use them for our news. The other thing is that we are opening we have a Facebook page, and we are opening up a Google group. So we're going to send you an invitation to be on the Google group so that we can send reminders, or just the day of. Sometimes some information needs to be sent, or we can send some of these links that we have for each other.
Great.
So that'll be there.
What's the name of the Facebook page?
Pardon?
What's the name of the Facebook page?
Creation in Crisis. Exactly the name of this group.
Okay.
We appreciate so much you coming. And
I would
now-
add about that page,
Yeah.
I am feeding it now almost entirely by myself. And I think people are free to, when you run across something inspiring, something important, wherever it falls on the spectrum, consider sharing. That's how we move this information along. And remember, there's 23 of us today, but we touch, at least one other person. And so that's how we build this.
Mm-hmm.
Penny, is that a page? This shows you how brilliant I am.
Yeah, it's a Facebook page.
Not a group.
Not a group.
Okay.
It's page.
Okay. All right.
You're going to start a Google group.
Right. Okay. Okay. I'm not sure. I was told that you can share things on a group, but not on a page. So we may need to make a group attached to the page.
Okay.
There you go.
That's worth knowing.
We can see how techie I am. Okay. I'm asking Art if you would stay afterwards, and Penny if you would, just for a minute when everybody else checks out. Okay. Thank you.
All right.
All right. Back to Penny.
Are you ready?
You're ready.
Okay, so Mamuse, M-A-M-U-S-E. It's 2 women, I believe, and there is a group out in California doing a wider group that is doing music related to the Great Turning. Well worth checking into if music is one of the mediums that speaks to you. All right, just one time, and here it goes. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning, we shall learn to lead in love.
Nice.
Thank you, Penny.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you all who have joined us and added your energy and wisdom and purpose to this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
See you next month.
Thank you.
See you next month.
Thank
please.
you.
We like your company.
So from Joanna's words, I'd like to introduce you to the central purpose of the work that reconnects. It is to help people uncover and experience their innate connections with each other and with the systemic self-healing powers of the web of life, so that they may be enlivened and motivated to play their part in creating a sustainable civilization. Our aim in the work that reconnects has been to unblock the feedback loop so people can trust their own experience and speak the truth of what they see and feel and know what is happening to their world. This essential function of the work that reconnects, good medicine at any time, has been of enormous value when corporate-controlled government tightens its grip on the public mind. In the short time the Supreme Court of the United States put George W. Bush in the White House, the changes have been swift, sharp, and dramatic, giving free rein to economic forces that despoil Earth and impoverish her people. Now, with greater need than ever for public monitoring and outcry, we have become a truth-deprived and fearful populace. As these developments darken our future, our trust is in the ability to discern and to choose. Despite all the very real as well as fabricated fears, despite the pace of destruction and the fog of distraction, it is still possible to turn back to the well springs of life. We can find in the love that grounds us in the living earth, clarity, courage, and self-respect to free ourselves from bondage to a sick and death-dealing economy. After 36 years, the work that reconnects is still the work that reconnects, but it's got a finer edge, ready to slice through the confusion and delusions that entangle the mind. These are tools cutting us free from all we do not need and do not want. These practices reveal what we want. It is right there in front of us, waiting for us to reach for it together. Art, would you be willing to share your quotation?
Yeah, something happened about 2 summers ago. I had come back from an assignment overseas and I was hanging around way too much on the couch, watching way too much TV, and it was affecting me and it was getting me very, very upset. And at one point, I got very upset and very emotional about remember this was 2 summers ago, the children being taken away from their parents at the border. And anyway, let me read some of it. And again, what Joanna says here is profound to some extent, but obvious statements in another, but it's how she said it and how I needed to see it at that particular time. And consequently, the following weekend, I was in Washington, D.C., participating in a demonstration against children being separated at the border. So how do we be fully present to our world, said Joanna Macy, at a time when the suffering and the prospects for conscious life forms are so grim? The living systems of Earth are coming apart under the onslaught of the industrial growth society scrambling for the last dollars. There never has been a guarantee for human life. I know that we're not sure how this story will end. I want so much to feel sure. I want to be able to tell people, don't worry, it's going to be okay. And you know what? I realize that would not be doing anyone a favor. First of all, we can't know. But secondly, if somehow we could be given a pill to be convinced, don't worry, it's going to turn out okay, would that elicit from us our greatest creativity and courage? No. It's that knife edge of uncertainty where we come alive to our truest power. So we do ourselves the favor, we honor ourselves to live with sufficient realism and dignity to know that we're right with that knife edge of uncertainty. And we don't know how it's going to come out. There are no guarantees. Then we realize, but wait, there are no guarantees anyway for anything. There never has been guarantee for human life. And it's in that uncertainty, that is the nature of life. All the wise ones tell us that. And that's where we come alive. So I put that quote and also the link to the YouTube video in the chat.
Thank
And
you.
I tried to cut and paste it and couldn't. But the 3 dots says save chat. Now, I don't know where it saves it.
We'll find it. I managed to copy it and put it in a Word document.
Yeah,
So
that's what I
have-
do. I just block a bunch of text, and actually you can start at the beginning and just block the whole thing and then pop it into a Word document. That seems to work.
Yep, I have it. I can send it to you.
Great. Great. Well, we
Wait,
did it.
okay, wait a second. Recording. I'm still recording, so I'm going to stop it. Welcome to Creation in Crisis, a monthly conversation about the present crisis in creation. Oh, shit, that's bad. Hello, and welcome to Creation in Crisis, a monthly conversation across generations about how we respond to the current ecological vulnerability and climate change, based on deep mysticism and conscious evolution. This monthly Thursday afternoon online gathering is sponsored by Creation Spirituality Communities and is hosted by its elders as a way to foster a cross-generational community of conscious and a holistic approach to activism on behalf of Earth. Today's presenter is Dr. Penny Andrews, a powerful motivator, workshop and ritual leader who has focused most of her powerful intellect and creative energy on deep transformation. Penny has studied creation spirituality with Matthew Fox and evolutionary cosmology with Brian Swimme, served on the board of Marian Woodman's Foundation, and presented at the Parliament of the World's Religions. She is a powerful embodiment of earth, truth, and action. Today, she will be introducing us to the basic concepts within Joanna Macy's work that reconnects, for which she is now a trained facilitator, which she uses in her work in Racine, Wisconsin. Penny will start our session with an introduction to Joanna Macy's concepts and a response to today's crisis in creation. Penny? Greetings and welcome to Creation in Crisis, a monthly conversation across generations about how we respond to the current ecological vulnerabilities and climate change based upon deep mysticism and conscious evolution. This monthly Thursday afternoon online gathering is sponsored by Creation Spirituality Communities and hosted by its elders as a way to foster a cross-generational community of conscience and a holistic approach to activism on behalf of Earth. Today's presenter is our own Penny Andrews, a powerful motivator, workshop, and ritual leader who has focused most of her powerful intellect and creative energy on deep transformation. Penny studied at the University of Creation Spirituality with Matthew Fox and studied evolutionary cosmology with Brian Swimme. She served on the board of the Marian Woodman Foundation for several years and presented at the Parliament of the World's Religion. She is a powerful embodiment of earth, truth, and action. Today, she will be introducing us to the basic concepts within Joanna Macy's work that reconnects, for which she is now a trained facilitator. Penny will start our sessions with an introduction to Joanna Macy's concepts and a response to today's crisis in creation. Penny?